tragic.
This is hilarious.
This is so
I was
funny.
muted. You can hear me now. That whole time, all of that was muted. Can you hear me now? Can I get confirmation in the chat that people can hear us now? Now that we're unmuted. If somebody could confirm that, we will get started.
That's so nice.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Dylan. With that, I think we'll get started here.
Yeah,
you ready?
well, I mean, yeah, except your entire spiel now falls
I know.
on deaf ears.
I know. I'll do
come
it
back
again.
to
I'll do it
later.
again. I'll start the show properly.
Yeah. I like it.
Here we go. Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast live from Indianapolis, Indiana. We are here for the 2023 NFL Combine. My name is Easton Freeze, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network, and I am joined in person for the first time in show history by producer JT. JT, how are you?
I'm actually fantastic. We've had such the eventful day today, and it technically is not the first time we've ever been in person together. We did a episode, maybe a little bit on the sauce that after the Super Bowl
episode.
So we were a little sauced up there, and it was a good episode, and then it got lost. So maybe that's for the best. I don't know, but Guess what? Now we are here live in Indianapolis at the Combine. We had our day one. By the way, eat your heart out, Radio Row, because this is a 10 times better setup than anybody on Radio Row. I mean, can we get a second to just
look at Ben Deming right here. Damn, producer JT brings crazy value to the show's flow department.
I think I'm probably up there with like Matthew Berry and Ian Rappaport for best hairdo today. I think.
Matthew Berry's hairdo? Yeah, no, I think that's true. So we're here in Indianapolis. We are covering the Combine all week long. And we got a lot to talk about today with you guys, I hope. Before we get into the meat of the conversation, and we heard a ton from Tim Kelly, Mike Vrabel, and Rand Carthon today on day one. Not a whole lot in terms of actually none today in terms of prospects here at the Combine, but a lot from coaches getting acclimated, getting our setup here. Really gorgeous studio. We are proud to be here in part thanks to 440 Sports, which we are a part of the podcast network, and in part thanks to Broadway Sports Media, who we write and cover the Titans and the NFL for. Before we get into the meat of things, if you are watching, thank you for being here. A couple of things I need you to do. If you could share this show wherever you're listening, on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Oh no, my microphone is falling. If you could share it and make sure anybody you think might be interested in watching the show can watch the show, please make sure you retweet, like, repost, whatever that may be. Text it to them, send them the link, and that would be much appreciated. We also want to hear from you. We want to interact with you guys on the show. So if you go to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube, the YouTube page, you'll find the live stream of this show, and you can interact in the chat function there on YouTube. So please let us know your thoughts. We want to talk back and forth with you as we talk through some of the highlights from today's events with Rand Carthon, Mike Vrabel, and Tim Kelly. Now, JT, if you wouldn't mind vamping for 10 seconds while I fix my falling microphone. We set this entire studio up 10 seconds ago, and I'm already falling apart.
It's okay, but we're gonna start with Kenneth Krall here, who said, "I need your positive silver linings, Easton. Today was a massive bummer, but not surprising." I don't know if I'm gonna go.
Can I get elaboration?
We need a little bit. I don't know if it was I get. And we're going to get into this. I get if you're coming from a Titans stand or like Titans, of course you are, a Tannehill perspective here and what you wanted to hear today. And hopefully that they were going to go into a little bit more detail. They're never going to go into more detail until something finally happens. We're just never going to get that. But outside of Tannehill, I think we heard, and maybe a little bit of Tim Kelly, but we'll get into that. I think we heard what we expected from all three of these guys today. But we're going to get into that, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on the situation. Then Ben Deming says, will the podcast establish the run, given that it is a Titans pod?
Listen, we're all about establishing the run here.
We really are. And we're gonna get off running now. That hopefully,
now my microphone is not falling. If it falls again, it may. We've got a solution to find with this table. It doesn't like our mic stands, but we're determined to keep them because they're cool and convenient. Great. So we'll figure it out by tomorrow's show. We're going to do one of these each night while we're here, which is the next 7 nights. This is part 1 of 7 for the Hot Read Podcast live from the Combine. And we are now almost 9 minutes in. So let's get into the meat of the show today.
Yeah.
We got to speak with Rand Carthon at the podium He was there, and it was a big media frenzy. He then gave us local guys that are here a little bit of time on the side, and then we got to hear from Tim Kelly for the first time as the Titans' new offensive coordinator, as well as Mike Vrabel. Both of those were powwows that were on the side. They weren't live streamed, I don't think. So everything that people know, think, hear, and see about that has been from folks reporting that, different beat writers. There's a good group from Nashville here. I'm not sure how long they're going to be around, I think some of them are here for the early part of the week, but it's cut from a combine standpoint. Generally, it's been a wild day. You come here, and we were super excited to come for a number of reasons. The primary reason is to get to see all these awesome prospects and talk about them and evaluate them and produce a bunch of content. But another thing that is super cool is the entire NFL is here in Indianapolis for the week. It's crazy, the names and faces that are everywhere. I mean, the second we got into town, especially the second we got to the convention center, it was names and faces galore. Every time I turned around, I saw somebody that I either follow now and like read their work or watch their show, or I grew up watching them on ESPN. It's not, I know that they're here. It's not a surprise that they're here, but it is jarring to turn around and suddenly I'm, between you and me, like I turn around and Ian Rappaport's standing right behind me. It's like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. And so everybody's here, and that makes for a really interesting media event. It is, there's a reason it's such a big deal. The media is all here, and they get a really good scoop on all of the, sometimes under the table, sometimes over the table, little wink and a nod, handshake action that goes on. The league year really begins here in the combine. All of the coaches and GMs and scouts and player personnel and front office folks that are here, and there are a ton of them. And you see guys in team jerseys, not team jerseys, team uniforms, team hoodies, walking around in packs, and you could tell, oh, there's a group of scouts, oh, there's a group of trainers. They Radio Row is super cool. But I'm really excited to jump into talking about what we heard. And we've got 9 or 10 clips here from speaking to some Titans personnel, starting with Let's start with Carthon. Is that where we should begin?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we started our day.
That is, yeah. That was our first guy we got to talk to was Carthon.
And Diesel said, "Have we seen Derek Carr yet?"
No,
he's supposed to be here, so maybe we'll run into him.
That is what we were told.
I know we ran into the moment we stepped into the building. We ran right into Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll, yeah, walking away from his availability.
He was walking away from his availability. We're walking into the building. All the fans who were like going into like their
that's the thing. So there's so much all here at the same place. You've got Radio Row right next door to. There's like an office for.
We're good.
Oh, the camera just decided to yell at us for a second.
Yeah.
There's a section for the league's players at the NFLPA.
Yep.
Right next door to the NFL Experience, which is a fan situation that we're going to cover in more detail. I think Thursday morning.
Yeah.
We're potentially going to be getting special media access to the NFL Fan Experience, where there's like the 40-yard dash and a bunch of the drills that they do for the combine set out for fans to try. So I think we're going to go in there, and for the culture, we might just have to do a little bit of baseline testing of these, different tests. See what our 40 time is. If somebody in the chat wants to put the over under on what my 40 time is, somebody throw the over under out there. We actually know this. We were talking about it last night because I ran a 40-yard dash at a Titans game, I think 4 years ago, before I was covering the NFL. Mm-hmm. In khaki shorts and tennis shoes where the soles were rubbed almost all the way down, so I had no grip. And I got a baseline there. From Carthon first. So Carthon, new GM for the Titans. He spoke today twice, once to the general media and then once to us in a powwow. And there were 3 main takeaways for me from what he said. I don't think there was anything wrong with what he said. I don't think there was anything all that revolutionary about what he said, however. And this first video was him generally speaking to how his time has been in about a month since he's been here in Nashville, getting acclimated, getting used to working very closely on a regular basis with Mike Vrabel. This was his answer to the question, how have he and Mike Vrabel been getting along?
I lean on Mike a lot. Our offices are right next door to each other, and so I'm in there or he comes to my office. And again, this is his vision of the offense, defense, and special teams. I'm learning that, right? So the best person to learn that from is him. So I go to him, hey man, am I seeing this correct? I think this guy can do these things. And about, all right, what are we looking for in this? So I met with the assistant coaches from each position group and had them put together a 15 to 20 play highlight tape of what they're looking for in every single position. And when they're talking about hand use or, talking about specific moves, put examples on the tape so I can see. So I'm learning their language through that. And so again, whether it's with Mike, whether it's with Shane, whether it's with Tim or Alt, like we're spending time together so I can learn their language and see exactly what they're talking about when we're talking to players.
The thing from that comment for me, JT, that stuck out more than, he's going to say he and Vrabel are getting along well. Things are going great. That is all obvious and fluff to me. There's an element to all of these press conferences, especially when you have media that isn't regularly talking to these guys. Like the national media wants to get their one very generic question in that we all know has been asked a long time ago. So you're going to get some of that. But he kind of went beyond the question there and started talking about part of the way that he started to, implement his process from a scouting standpoint. And it's still very early in the process, but him talking about how in order to get on the same page with his player personnel guys, as well as the coaching staff, him talking about how he's having coaches and some of his personnel guys put together reels of tape that best demonstrate what they want in their players, what in their position group, what they want each position on this team to look like in an ideal world. That's a really fantastic way to get on the same page in terms of, I'm the guy going out and getting these players for you. Let me know what you want. Instead of telling me, show me, right? And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that it was a peek behind the curtain of finally understanding what exactly collaboration looks like for this team after
we've been talking about it a long time.
We've talked about it for quite a while now, but I do think it's a really good idea, especially after what was just a debacle season, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Todd Downing. I think it's a step in the right direction in which especially also from a talent evaluation, it's a breath of fresh air from former GM John Robinson.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And it's something that we actually ended up asking. Somebody asked Mike Vrabel about it at his availability. And that was something that he mentioned as well, saying that's something they've been doing. It's been working well. And that's the best way to, I think, get on the same page on that front. So that comment was interesting. The next comment that I found interesting, he was inevitably asked about Jeffrey Simmons, star defensive tackle for the Titans. Will he or will he not remain? It's not really a secret at all. I was going to say not a well-kept secret, but it's not a secret at all that the Titans are going to do everything in their power to keep him around, as they should. And this is going to be the offseason where, barring something significant happening, he'll be getting, even though he's on contract for next year. So even if they sign him, when they sign him in this offseason, if anything, it might bring this year's cap number down a little bit. But what he's being paid next year is set. He's on the roster unless they were to trade him. There's no holding out or anything like that. However, he is eligible for his first big boy contract, his first non-rookie contract, and he's going to get paid handsomely. And that's something that Rand Carthon has been vocal about having high on his to-do list, high on his priority lists. And he's now being vocal about the fact that they are beginning that process and working to keep Jeffrey Simmons in town. Rand had this to say regarding Jeffrey Simmons and a special someone that really wants Jeff to stick around.
Conversation went really well. Frank in the weight room has done a good job of letting me know when guys are around, because I'm still getting to know these guys. And so I make sure, if I know there are players in the building, I go down to the weight room, training room, or locker room where they are, just to introduce myself and let them know that my door is open if they want to have further conversation about anything, whatever it is, and they're more than welcome to come in. And Jeffrey was one of the guys that took the invite, and we sat and had a 20-minute 30-minute conversation, realized we had a lot of people in common. And so it was really a get to know each other and, break ground. But the first question I got when I got the job was from my 6-year-old son. And he asked if Jeffrey Simmons was going to be his boy, And so I had to ask Jeffrey if he wanted to be my 6-year-old son's boy. So Jeffrey's cool with it right now. I told my son, Jeffrey might not like you. So we'll see when we get there. But it was a great conversation, and he's a cool dude.
I was disappointed.
His boy.
Yeah, well, I was disappointed that the follow-up question wasn't, what did Jeffrey say? Have you asked Jeffrey whether or not he's willing to be Ran Carthon's son's boy?
Yeah.
He should be. I got to see Ran Carthon. I got to briefly meet his sons and his family at the introductory press conference a couple weeks ago. Awesome kids. So I'd imagine the answer is probably yes. But this was not really a big news thing. It'll probably be treated like a news thing by a lot of the aggregating sites that just are looking for articles to put out there that are pretty, well, not pretty. They're just useless. They're fluff. It's just nonsense. Well, not nonsense, but it's stating the obvious in 300 words to meet your quota. That's a whole nother topic, but this is something that is more confirmation than news, right? Like we now know, they're still working on it. Yeah, it's still on the top of his to-do list, and it's something that he's going to do. The big question is just how much is that number going to be? I don't think people are going to be shocked by any number. If he, if it's a market-setting deal, then I think people will understand that. Is he the best player at his position in the league right now? Probably not. Is he top 3 to 5? Absolutely. There's an argument to be made at times that when he's healthy, he can play like the best at his position. I'd say Aaron Donald is typically above him. But if he were to reset the market, a guy in the echelon of the top 5 at any position, setting the market with their contract, it's not unheard. It's pretty standard, actually. Yeah. It's typically what happens. And so if he ends up getting, close to or north of $20 million a year, it'll be a big deal, but it'll be a long-term contract. So it'll be 4, 5, 6 years, I'm sure. And it'll be a backloaded contract. So he'll actually, I'm sure, be ridiculously cheap cap number wise in his first couple of seasons. Whereas, if you were to go smaller contract route or a franchise tag route, that cap number would be pretty dramatic. So the big question is how much, but maybe folks, if you're listening, let us know in the chat. Is there a number that you would see and be like, they shouldn't have paid him that? I don't think there's a number. I think you could come out tomorrow and say, Jeffrey Simmons just signed a 6-year, $24 million APY deal. And everyone's going to be like, great, he's a Titan for a long time. He may be a Titan for life. Like that. That's not going to shock anybody or upset anybody. He is worth every penny of whatever they give him, and they're going to. So that's really all we learned from that.
No, yeah. I think one more thing about that clip in general there is that just how much we got to see even more how much Ran Carthon is a people's person, having even more of that open door policy, just wanting to get to know the guys in and out of the weight room, in the locker room. He wants to know who is in his who is on his team. He talked about also in another clip about what's the most important thing this week for him at the combine, and that's getting to know the guys, talking to them, making relationships, trying to reach out to those guys and see who is a good fit for this team. And I think that's another aspect that is a breath of fresh air. Yeah, that was another thing that he mentioned, and we don't have the clip for that one, but he was asked what is important to him while he's here at the combine. And I find that to be it is one of the more obvious questions for coaches and GMs, but it is one of the more interesting ones to me. Maybe most of the GMs and coaches are just here and they want to see the general things, like, are they confident? Are they well-spoken? Are they driven? Are they intelligent? Do they know ball, right? Like maybe that's all they want to know. But these high-level individuals that work in the NFL, that are one of 32 NFL GMs, one of 32 NFL head coaches, one of a handful top-level personnel executives in the league, like these high-level individuals didn't get to where they got to by looking for the generic things in the people that they're trying to surround themselves with. A's surround themselves with A's. B's surround themselves with C's. And these A's are surrounding themselves with A's not because they're lucky, but because they know how to pick an A out of the crowd. That's the key. And it's a lot harder
It's a lot easier said than done. And so I find it a fascinating question. What exactly are you looking for when you're here? And we got that answer from Rand Carthon. We got it from Vrabel as well, who we'll actually play that clip in a little bit. From Carthon, to his point, like you said, what he's interested in is they're not playing any more football. Like, we've got the college tape. It's done. It's in the books. We can watch that all we want. A lot of these guys, we've watched all of it already. I want to get to know the guys now. And, we're building a culture. A big talking point of his that he's repeated a number of times is that he's, not looking to collect talent. He's looking to build a team. And he's big on culture. He's big on people skills. I mean, we saw that when he made a point in his availability with the local media corral to point out that in mentioning Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM for the Vikings, as well as some others in his introductory press conference, crediting them for help, I think in the analytics department, when he was working with the analytics department in San Francisco, he gave credit to the head coach of the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, today. I think he said he got flack from McDaniel after he said that at the introduction,
having to do with the left him out. Elijah Mitchell.
Yes, the Elijah Mitchell story. Yes, thank you, because I guess Mike McDaniel
made the tape reel of.
Was it he? Okay,
yeah, he made the tape reel of him, and then Rand Carthon was just like, I like that guy, and now he's taking that story.
And it's funny because both of those guys were in there at the same time, and so we got to see. I think on the Hot Read podcast Twitter account, we have the video. You took a video. There's a video
because the entire kind of rest of the Titans media just kind of dispersed, and me and Easton were just like sitting there, just kind of collecting our thoughts or whatnot. And Mike McDaniel's press conference, which, by the way, quick aside, still the funniest human being in the NFL. He is
the most naturally hilarious person. I want to be his best friend. I'm not a starstruck kind of person, so I'm not mildly intimidated, naturally nervous, but I'm not overly nervous enough to the point that I won't introduce myself to basically anybody here. And I guess part of the reason for that is because if they hate me, then cool. Like, I didn't know him to begin with.
Yeah.
But with him, like, I can count the number of people that make me nervous at this event that I'm nervous to speak to on one hand. He's one of them. Because if I ever speak to him, I want him to be my best friend. I want him to like me. So I'm afraid of what I would say.
Yeah, his press conference was coming up, and I think Rand got done with one of the bigger national guys. And actually, and we were just sitting there, and we got to videotape a moment on the Hot Read Podcast Twitter page of them kind of catching up there right before McDonald's press conference.
Right. All right. We got one more video from Rand Carthon's press conference before we talk about this comment. And it was the comment that is going to lead all the headlines for Titans news after today. And maybe the reason that some of you are a little bit more bummed out today than you wish. But if you've been listening to this show at all in the last 2 months, it shouldn't bum you out. It shouldn't even surprise you. We'll talk about that. Before we do, real quick, if you are watching us live, thank you. Make sure that you are subscribed over on the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page. That's where you can find this live stream each and every afternoon or evening for the next 7 days. This is part 1 of 7 here, live from the Combine in Indianapolis. Do us a favor, retweet, repost, like, share with your friends and family, send to somebody that you think might find our coverage of the Combine interesting. And I'll let you know if today's show is a little bit too slow or not quite as information dense for you as you'd like. Understandable. This, this is the exposition of our 7-part series. We got to set the ground rules. Right. We got in today. We've done a lot of setting up and traveling, so we didn't get to spend more than 2 or 3, maybe like 4 hours at the conference center. Tomorrow's going to be all day. Actually, every day after today is going to be an all-day affair. We're going to get to speak to a ton more people and get into the meat. Today's really not a Combine day. It wasn't. It was a Titans media field trip day.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the Titans guys said. We talked to a couple guys in the media who were like, "Are you guys going to be here all week?" And they're like, "No, we just came down for this, and then we're packing up, leaving tomorrow."
Which, if you're not a draft sicko, I understand. Yeah. But since we're a Titans show and a draft show, we are staying, and we're interested in watching the testing and talking to prospects and everything. So the shows after this will be very different and also packed with inside information, thoughts, comments, things we heard throughout the day. Every note we take, we will talk about each evening or afternoon. So make sure to tune in every day. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure to share with your friends, retweet. And then
if
last
there's
but not least,
any prospects you guys want, if that you think
Well,
would
and
be
that's-
Titan specific, like
that's what we're going to talk about
reach out
every
with us.
day.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have prospects that you're wanting us to pay attention to or try to speak to, or get information on, let us know in the chat. We want to hear from you guys in the chat, your thoughts on all of these clips we're going through from today's Titans availability. So in the chat, let us know your thoughts, comments. We can chat back and forth with you if you go to the Broadway Sports Media YouTube page and interact with us there.
And this clip here is going to be the biggest one that would probably get reactions.
Yeah, so let's get into it. He was asked, Rand Carthon, during his national media availability today about Ryan Tannehill, because of course he was. And this was a question that he very gracefully and professionally avoided really answering. He gave a non-answer that I hadn't heard before, a clever spin on the classic non-answer during the offseason for player contracts. His non-answer, if you pay attention at the very end, he gives what sounds like a definitive answer on Ryan Tannehill, while in reality, it is not even remotely close to a real answer. Let's hear what Rand Carthon had to say about Ryan Tannehill as the future for the Titans at the quarterback position.
Guys, I just want to speak freely for a moment. I know everybody wants to make a big deal, out of the quarterback position and whether he will or won't be here. But you guys just have to accept the fact that Ryan is under contract, for us. And right now he's a Titan and he will be a Titan.
That last part right there, he is a Titan and he will be a Titan. Now, what does that mean? That last part, he will be a Titan, sounds definitive. I think we even saw Ian Rappaport, who spoke to Rand Carthon, I think separately, one-on-one on NFL Network. Mm-hmm. But we saw a clip shortly after he said this to us. I think he said something along the same lines as Ian Rappaport, and it was quasi-reported on Twitter, at least, by a lot of national media folks that it sure sounds like Ryan Tannehill is going to stay in Tennessee. Now, in reality, that statement is a fake definitive answer, because he will be a Titan until you trade him, or until the end of next season, or until the end of his contract, or until the end of the contract that you give him an extension for this offseason. Like, he will be. Until when? Until 9 p.m. tonight? We don't know. Yeah. We don't know. So that's not a real answer, but I do think it is further indication, and their messaging on this has been consistent. So props to the Titans for this, but it's yet another indication that the Titans are keeping the cards close to their vest. Maybe they surprise us. It's a very insular organization when it comes to their dirty laundry, their thoughts, plans, hopes, dreams, and desires. They keep things very tightly packed and behind closed doors. But all indications this offseason have been in lockstep. Ryan Tannehill is going to be the quarterback for the Titans for at least one more season. And on this show, we've been talking about how, yeah, of course he is. There is no perfect answer. There's a number of things the Titans could do at the quarterback position this season, but none of them are perfect. And I think the best choice for them in terms of getting this team rebooted and finding a new version of this team in a wise way that takes a not too long-term but not too short-sighted approach is to give Ryan Tannehill an extension to lower his cap number for this one season, make yourself an out, and then after next year, reevaluate and probably try to move on. If you can't, then you continue to kick that can down the road. But he's going to be playing for the Titans next year, is what it sounds like. We don't know for sure. We're not going to know for sure until we get to August. But right now, we have yet another reason to think he's going to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, I think another angle at that right there, and I think Renegade's thingy here says that he said he'll be there, not that he will start. Who knows? I mean, Vrabel,
that is what he said.
Vrabel was throwing around. Vrabel in one of his questions said Tannehill, Malik Willis, or even Dobbs, and so he's just throwing out. It could be anyone.
Well, Mike Vrabel, his approach to all of this, he already doesn't like talking to media. This is well known. He especially is not interested in, and I wouldn't be either. He's not interested in talking about players' contract situations in the offseason.
He doesn't really care about
their
that.
status with the team, whether they're going to be starters or not, and he knows so much can change. I mean, he talked last year around this time on national, Rich Eisen show and other national programs, AJ Brown, as long as I'm the coach of this team, AJ Brown is going to be a Titan. He has learned sometimes by his own mistakes. you got to be careful what you say. And this is another example of, him guarding his words, because a lot can change between now and August.
And Diesel says, if Ryan's here and healthy, I can't imagine they wouldn't start him if he's healthy. That's right. I mean, that's basically the point there. He's better than the other two options. And even if you would cut him, it saves what, like 26, 27 million towards the cap this year, right? If you cut him.
Well, there would be a significant dead cap charge, but I don't know.
There would, but
it's in the 20s, I believe.
But the point of that is, and I overheard this talking to some other media members right after the press conference, is that like, even if you were to go cut him and try to, like, you're not going to sign a Derek Carr or a Jimmy G or any of those guys for that cap hit. You're not going to sign him for 26 or 27, because you're not going to pay more money for a guy who's going to basically be the same thing as Ryan Tannehill. So why wouldn't you just let this next year ride? Because you don't want to pay any of those other guys more money.
Yeah, so I believe with the potential out, it would be $18.8 million in dead cap, saving them roughly $18 million against the cap, which, not insignificant by any means.
Yeah.
But like you said,
you're not going to have enough to sign any of those other guys.
If you're getting a competent replacement, it's going to be a net loss. You have this money invested.
You could go get like a Jacoby or Brissett or something, but I don't think that's what they want to do.
They definitely, I don't think they would have any interest in that. This is a situation where, and our buddy Zach Lyons over at stackingtheinbox.com, as well as Football and Other F Words here on the Broadway Sports Media Podcast Network, is constantly beating this drum of dead cap is like, you shouldn't consider dead cap nearly as heavily as many do when you're considering folks staying or leaving, because it is a sunk cost. It is something that is going to remain dead, whether they stay, go, trade, retire. Like, it is what it is, man. Yeah. And so that's the way that it is.
Let's move on to Tim Kelly. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and I found our availability in terms of interest today, it was Tim Kelly the most interesting.
Yeah,
purely
surprising
because he spent a good amount. Spent almost 20 minutes with us. He answered a ton of questions. This is the first time we've gotten to speak with him. I think it's the first time media has formally been able to speak with him at all with the Titans.
Yeah,
there may have been some times last year in the preseason, but his role has been in the dark for most of his time with the Titans, and he himself has not really been out in front because he's been this vague analyst title behind the scenes. Yeah. Now, as the offensive coordinator, he steps out into the spotlight, and we got to speak with him about his vision for the team, his thoughts on last season. We covered a lot of ground, but there were four big things for me that stood out from this press conference from him. It was a media availability that I found generally good on his part, but he made more mistakes than Carthon or Vrabel did. He had one comment in particular that was a really bad look, and we'll not start with that. We'll get to that in a moment. We first asked him, I asked him this question: can we get a more definitive, at least some details maybe on what he did last year? This has been a recurring question for, it feels like, a couple of decades at this point. What is it exactly that you do here, or I guess did here? Because now we know what he does. He coordinates the offense. Last year, how involved were you in that dumpster fire? I asked him about this, and here's what he had to say.
For any details on just how involved you were last year, and if there were any things that, from like a grand philosophy standpoint, the team did offensively that if you were in charge you would have done, or maybe now will do a little differently.
I'll talk about kind of what my schedule, if you want to get into that last year, and how I was involved early on in the week. I'd make sure that I gave everything I could to Todd in terms of information on the opponent. So when he gets into the office on Monday after calling a game, he's got an idea as to what to expect when he turns on the film. So from there, was involved with being able to come up with some of the pass game ideas, and then along with some of the third down and red area ideas. So, last year for me, I was here to try and serve those guys and give any of those guys on that staff anything they asked for, whether it was me, running around like whatever you want to call me, during the scout teams and trying to give the best look I could to those guys, and just really trying to do anything I could to help us win.
Now, you can call it a cop-out well, not a cop-out, I suppose. You can call it wishful thinking. But to me, that reads as, I didn't really do anything. How did it read? Here's what it reads like to me, to elaborate. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. But to me, that reads like I was an idea guy. My role was kind of fluid. In practices, I helped with the tight ends. And then behind the scenes, in terms of a game plan standpoint, which is what I'm more interested in, how well can you coordinate since it's your number one priority? What did you do? And it sounds like he just came up with ideas and took them to Todd Downing and Mike Vrabel, and then they did with those ideas what they wanted. And it kind of sounds like they didn't maybe utilize them a whole lot. I'll tell you this much.
Yeah.
We found out he was apparently, according to Vrabel and his availability a couple weeks ago when they hired Todd Downing, he was responsible for first and second down passing play design. And the
Which
Titans
was so much better than, if you look at the stats, so much better than their third down passing.
It
stats.
was, but also they never passed
did
the ball first and second down.
Which kind of goes hand in hand there.
So if that's any indication of how much they were using his ideas,
if Todd Downing wasn't taking his ideas there on Monday and Tuesday, half of them were never making it to Thursday or Friday or to the game.
Yes, yeah.
It just never was getting past Todd Downing, and I think that's a big thing that he didn't really say, but like you can read between the lines there.
Right. So I don't say I wouldn't say that was a good thing. I don't think that abdicates him of responsibility for last season. I just think it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's frustrating.
I'd imagine if we could give him truth serum, he would probably say that there were times where he was really frustrated last season. I mean, everyone I'm sure on the team was frustrated, but he in particular was probably frustrated a bit due to how much he's a guy that, I'll tell you this, when he was hired by the Titans, he was a guy that already in his NFL career was at the level where he absolutely, he'd already been a coordinator briefly. He could be a coordinator and lead the show on that side of on a side of the ball. When you reach that level and then you're in a role where you're not even second in command, you're just one of the guys helping out on the team, and your ideas aren't, what you say doesn't go, I guarantee that's frustrating, because even if largely the person over you is going with your ideas, they're not going to go with everything you had in mind, and that's going to be frustrating. The impression I got from Kelly is that they didn't really run a whole lot of what his ideas were. And the vibe for me, and this is not reporting, this is just vibe analysis.
No, yeah.
The vibe in watching his body language during the press conference and asking him different questions, it seemed to me like he was being a bit guarded. It seemed to me like he was trying to hold back some frustration from last season and trying not to, and this is a good thing, stomp on the grave of past coaches that I may or may not have accidentally tweeted out the name of like 7 times today. And
just
then
can't get it out of your head, man.
Listen, it's going to happen again. Not just to me. I guarantee you folks are going to talk about Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing. No, it's Tim Kelly. I hate that they both are T names. And Todd Downing is happily at home in New York now. So apparently they are very happy to have him, by the way.
That was an interesting clip from PK.
PK Paul Karski was here in time to catch, actually, I think, ask a question of Jets GM Shane. Is it Shane? I think it's Shane. Is his last name.
I don't pay attention to the Jets.
Yeah, well, hard to pay attention to the Jets. Asking him about the hires, the Titans hires up there on the coaching staff, and he just was ranting and raving about how excited he was to have such a great guy in Todd Downing. And I don't know Todd Downing personally. I'm not saying he's not a great guy, but it was a funny moment. That's all I'll say. It's a funny moment.
However, the moment of everyone today, that was quite. It was probably the biggest miss by anyone in a press conference today. Came with the next comment that Tim Kelly had.
Correct. So this was the biggest, the worst thing that was said by any Titans employee today. Tim Kelly was asked, I think, by Paul Kaharski, whether or not he felt like the Titans needed to focus on being less predictable this year. Now, any Titans fan, you could ask that question to, and the answer would be, duh. Of course they do. They were far too predictable. Here's what Tim Kelly had to say when asked if the Titans were too predictable and if he's going to try to limit that predictability this season.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I didn't think we were predictable last year. I think there's some times where, certain games, certain things, weather, people you have available, things along those lines. There are a lot of elements that go into predictability or perceived predictability. So I wouldn't say that we were predictable last year.
The only thing I'll give him there is that he did slide in a little comment there about given the personnel, it was maybe a little harder to
There's no doubt about that. So
besides that, I mean,
before I play devil's advocate for him, he deserves to be buried a little bit for this, because that's bad. And not only did he say that bad thing, he then double and almost tripled down on the idea that he did not think the Titans were predictable last year, which is weird because the man that just hired him, the head coach of the team, on the record was very unhappy with how predictable the Titans were last year and has repeatedly said, we've got to get less predictable. So strange that you were high. Do you think he sat in the interview for the offensive coordinator position and they asked, what are your thoughts on the predictability of this offense? And he's like, I think we are a loose cannon. You have no idea. Wild card team offensively. I think we're going to just keep it up. Same level. And we were this wild and unpredictable. Right? We're staying right here.
And you know what?
Was that his answer?
His answer should have been what Dorito Lover 101, which by the way, great name, just said, just give Chig the ball and become unpredictable.
That's
and
right. I totally ungovernable.
I totally agree.
Well, that is an actual, whether he says it or not, whether he thinks it or not. And
it's something that should happen.
Yeah. While we have him on that truth serum, let's ask him that question again, because I guarantee you're getting a different answer. I don't think he actually believes that. Yeah. He's not a dumb person. Mike Vrabel wouldn't hire somebody that actually believes that. But the question is, why is he saying that? And it's not a good look to say that. It's not a good look to triple down on it like he did. So that was bad. And it's something that is at best a white lie, and he's a little coach speak action. At worst, I guess he's delusional, but I don't think he seems like a normal, well-adjusted person who's knows ball. So that's going to be something. But I think that he probably shares Vrabel's sentiment, and this has been Vrabel's MO as long as he's been the coach of the Titans. Not resorting first to blaming players, but not being afraid to say, "Hey, listen." As coaches, we can only do so much. From a game plan standpoint, we can only do so much. And especially when we're as injury riddled as we've been and have very limited quantity of players to choose from and utilize, and a pool of players that are limited individually. They're not the stars that we signed up for. Those guys that were long hurt or have long been hurt. It limits what we can do. We can't be unpredictable with Jeff Swaim on the field. We just and to his defense, to Todd Downing's defense, to everybody's defense. Yes, it is impossible to be as unpredictable as you should be in the NFL with pieces like Jeff Swaim on your roster, with pieces like Dennis Daly on your roster starting. That's not something that you can do, because those players aren't the kind of player that ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel, and we don't have that clip here ready pulled, but they were talking for pretty much the whole day, JT, and this seems to be a theme of their offseason, a theme that I think Ran Carthon is bringing over from the 49ers wisely. We've got to build a team that can kind of play positionless basketball a little bit. We're bringing it to football, man. We want guys like George Kittle, like Deebo Samuel, like Christian McCaffrey, really the identity of that Niners organization. And it was something that I think the Titans built their identity around a little bit with some of their past players. But in general, I think it's a little bit of a 180 philosophy shift for the Titans, because in recent years, in large part, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, but in large part, their identity has been, we're going to be a team that is an off the bus team. We're going to get off the bus, be bigger, stronger, scarier looking than you. And we're going to out physical you. And guess what? We have our will, and we're going to impose that will on you. And you're going to know exactly what that goal of ours is. And it's not going to matter. We're going to do it. And you're going to know exactly what's coming, and we're going to shove it down your throat and get away with it anyways. And the power of that is you can't understate how big a deal it is to be able to do that in the NFL. But the problem is when that's your identity and you lose guys that can do that, you no longer have a team that is built on being unpredictable. You have a team that's built on, we're going to do this one way, but that one way only works when you have stars that are just better than the person opposite them.
Yeah, I think Tim Kelly alluded to that a little bit, talking about how he wants, and I think Mike said this a little bit as well, about they want players who can be versatile, and they want versatility going into this new kind of regime and this new style that they want. And I think that's going to play a big part. And I think you also kind of alluded to some of that next year. Obviously, this year it didn't really work out, but now that you have maybe Treylon Burks back healthy, you can maybe bring in some more talent out on the outside with the wide receivers. Are they going to throw the ball more? And that's something that you asked Tim Kelly about.
It is. So we can go ahead and get to that clip. Let's talk about that one first, because I find this one interesting. I asked Tim Kelly about his philosophy, and I was trying to phrase it in a way that I wouldn't get an answer from him that was in relation to his plans for this season. Because again, who you have available to you limits what you can and can't do, right? And so my question about being able to throw the ball, it matters who you have on the team. Can you block to be able to throw the ball? Can you throw the ball with the quarterback that you have? Can you trust the guys who are supposed to catch the ball to be there to catch the ball, to get open? If they have those guys in a vacuum, in a perfect world, this was essentially the question that I gave to Tim Kelly. I asked, philosophy based, based in your philosophy as an offensive coordinator, rather, what do you believe is the correct amount to be throwing the ball in today's NFL, today's passing league? And my specific question was, do you think the amount that the Titans threw the ball last season, for example, is not enough? Do you have to be able to pass the ball more than the Titans were able to last year? That was the gist of the question. It's kind of a two-parter, and I thought his answer was interesting. Here's what he had to say.
Your general philosophy in today's NFL, do you think a team needs to throw the ball more than the Titans did last season to be successful?
I mean, again, it's such a unique question because it's based upon so many things. If you're able to build a huge lead running the football, like, you're going to run the ball a lot. If you're in 2-minute situations, you're going to throw the ball more. So there's so many factors that go into it, as opposed to just calling a run.
Sure.
I don't think it's fair to say that, to give an answer to that.
But when you sit down to make changes and try to be as successful as possible this year as a coordinator, is when you look back at last season, do you see a team that was limited by their inability to throw? Is that going to be something that you are focused more on, making sure that you have that ability when you need to?
Sure, yeah. I mean, again, being efficient throwing the ball, being efficient protecting the quarterback, being efficient catching the football, and being explosive when you have the ball in your hands. Absolutely, we want to improve in all those areas. So again, we're gonna find ways to work that with our players this off season. And again, when we hit the grass and when the games start to count, we want to be as efficient as we can in both running the football and throwing the ball.
So the Titans' new offensive coordinator, to his credit, he's on the train. He's on the train with Carthon and Mike Vrabel. We've got to be a more versatile team. We are handcuffing ourselves in a way that's not necessary with the identity that we've had, some of the players that we've had, and the way that we've played ball. We need to be a team that plays more positionless and has guys that can do more than one thing on the field. And more importantly, when they are on the field, their mere presence is a threat because you don't know what's going to happen. And so you have to, you have Christian McCaffrey on the field. You have to account for him passing and running. Same with Deebo Samuel. Same with George Kittle to an extent, or blocking. So there's an element of that from a personnel standpoint, and this is on Carthon's shoulders, he's going to be focused on getting those guys in. And for Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly's part, they're going to be focused on, okay, let's change the identity of this team with the players that are given to us to one that is able to play more positionless.
No, and I totally agree. I think, especially in this draft class, I think it's going to be very important to see where they go with all their draft picks this year and see if we see kind of a different pattern than what John Robinson was going for.
So this last clip kind of goes hand in hand with that question about the Titans needing to be able to throw the ball more. And by the way, the correct answer is yes. He naturally, coach spoke his way around a definitive answer, but in today's NFL, you have to be able, you don't have to throw the ball more than the Titans did. You know, if you have a schedule like the Eagles did, where it's relatively easy and you can, especially if you're a dominating run team and you can run the ball down teams' throats, then great, by all means, go for it. You don't have to do it, but you have to be able to do it, right? And that's something that the Titans, they failed on both fronts. They did not, but more importantly, they did not because they could not. And it all kind of was encapsulated by that quote after the Kansas City loss in the middle of the year, close loss with Malik Willis. Mike Vrabel goes on the record and when asked whether or not the Titans should have aired the ball out more with Malik Willis, he answers, well, who the F was he going to throw it to? Which is a fair point. The Titans didn't have those guys out there. So that's something that they're going to focus on. This last quote kind of goes hand in hand with that. He spoke to Titans' new offensive coordinator, Tim Kelly, spoke to looking for versatility, focusing in on planning this team around having versatility. Here's what he had to say on that topic.
One of the things that we want to do as an offense is we want to be versatile. So whether it ends up being multiple personnel groupings, multiple formations, playing in multiple tempos, just doing things to try to keep people off balance. So, that's what we're going to look to do moving forward. We want to put our guys in the best position possible.
By the way, shout out Nick Suss there, our guy Nick Suss over the Tennessean in the background of all of these clips. Gorgeous hair, gorgeous tie, right? Looking good. I think
he was the best, probably one of the best dressed guys out of us. There was a couple of us who didn't come to play today, especially.
It's a Tuesday travel day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Tuesday at the combine.
But friend of the show, Teron Davenport, caught the smoke from Mike Vrabel.
Well, I mean, if you follow the Titans at all, you know that TD and credit to him. He sets a high bar for himself with his fashion. He comes correct 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
It happened to be one of those days, off season,
it's a travel day.
casual travel Tuesday, and he wasn't dressed poorly. He was dressed like
he
just had an athletic jacket on and some jeans or khakis or something. But Vrabel, the problem was Vrabel was not in his classic vest. He was in a jacket for one reason or another. He was in a
button
suit,
down and jacket.
And so it started with Teron complimenting Vrabel, saying, "Hey, looking good. Like, ditch the vest for the jacket today, coach. Looking good." And Vrabel's just like, I thank you, Teron, and I expected better from you, which we were all thinking it, but he didn't have to do Teron like that out of the gate, because that was, hey guys, how's everybody going? Everybody doing? Teron, what are you wearing? Was essentially the vibe. So. But yeah, that is just another example of, and I don't want to beat this into the ground, so we'll move on to what Mike Vrabel had to say today. But just yet another example of the Titans this season. We've got 2 themes, big themes from them. Now we've got, the first one,
collaboration.
Thank you. Everybody at home should have said in unison, collaboration. Can you spell collaboration? And their second theme now is, it's not as easy as you thought about it for a second.
I had to.
Gun to your head. The answer is yes, you could spell it.
Yeah,
but if I told you needed to
for
be sure,
culture, I was doing it for the show. I was acting.
Oh, you think you for sure can spell it?
Yeah, we're not gonna do it right now.
I'm not gonna ask you to.
No.
But you're that confident?
Yeah, I am pretty confident. All right, let's move on.
We'll move on.
What's the second one?
Thanks for keeping me on track here.
I got
you. The second theme is versatility. It is changing the identity, and this is not something that should go under the rug. This is a big deal, because really this Titans team, their identity has been that bully ball, that will imposing team. And I don't know if they think you can't be that in the NFL anymore, or whether or not, I think it's more along the lines of they just don't have the guys to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's passing league, they have to evolve. So that's what they're looking to do. We've got 3 clips now from Mike Vrabel, and we're going to wrap the show up here in just a moment. But we've got these 3 clips to get to, and then we'll very briefly let you know what there is to look forward to for tomorrow's show, which will be totally different, not Titans focused necessarily, Titans adjacent, as we look at and speak to a number of guys that the Titans may be looking to draft in the first, second, third round. A lot of those guys are here. We'll get to speak to them and maybe talk to some other media folks. We'll have a guest or 2 on the show by the end of the week. But Vrabel had 3 things to say in his availability to us that I found the most interesting. The first was and this is the question I was talking about earlier, JT. For you, Mike Vrabel, what specifically do you look for when you speak to and meet the person? You know, we watch the player and we get an idea of the prospect on tape, but when he gets to meet the person, and for a guy like Vrabel, I think him more than the average coach, you can tell it matters to him building. I mean, he's a big culture guy.
Yep.
It matters to him not having 8-4 guys. He don't want any 8-4 guys. He doesn't want, bad attitude guys. He wants guys that are selfless, team guys, kind of old school football in that way. And that part works even in today's NFL. It's selfless, hardworking leaders that are willing to do anything and everything for the team's success. So I know when he goes into that room, he's not taking it lightly. He's not checking his watch, trying to get out of the room. He's trying to get to the bottom of these individuals. And so I asked him, what is it that you, Mike Vrabel, are looking for in these prospects? Here's what he had to say.
Time of year when you're meeting with prospects, there are the obvious things that you're looking for: communication skills, intelligence, confidence. But are there certain things in particular that you're looking for that may not be as obvious when you get to sit down with a guy?
All I'm looking for is authenticity. I don't want somebody that their agent thought we wanted to talk to, or somebody that someone said they should be. Who is that player going to be in the middle of the season when they feel like shit and maybe things aren't going great? Just looking for who that person is, and is there a willingness to learn? Is there a willingness to put the team first and do whatever's asked of them?
That's something that is it's a good answer.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not shocking at all that's because Vrabel he's the kind of guy that the Vrabel you get, not 100%, but generally speaking, I think the Vrabel you get in any public availability of his is mostly just Mike Vrabel. He puts on a nice face when he has to do a national media hit. He puts on an annoyed face, which is he's truly annoyed when he has to speak to the local media. And I can't blame him for that. I really can't. Because sometimes, especially in the offseason, there are some, not dumb questions, but there's nothing to talk about. And the league literally forces him to do it. He's paid pretty nicely. He can handle it. But you get what you see with Mike Vrabel, and it doesn't shock me at all that that's something that he finds important in his players.
No, I think so. I think this is probably a bigger week for him. I think we came into the week. There's a lot of people around the NFL saying, well, what are coaches' roles? What are GM's roles? They're kind of going away with the combine. At the combine. Right. But I think Vrabel.
I mean, the Rams don't send anybody.
The Rams didn't send anybody. The Jets coach isn't here.
Right. The Niners just sent their GM.
Yeah, they just sent their GM.
So some coaches think it's a bunch of bunk, but some coaches.
But I think Vrabel takes it very seriously, and I think it's a big part of what goes into his team and his culture.
Right, and I can understand those coaches that think this is worthless to them. I can understand that, I guess, from the underwear Olympics element of the combine. Maybe those test numbers, they figure they can, just have them shipped over to me. I can watch it at home. It's all televised. It's fine. But, and they'll get to meet with prospects at a number of different events in their meetings that they are allowed to have a certain number of folks prospects invited to do team meetings later in the offseason. But they are passing on a big opportunity. The biggest, this is the biggest collection in one place of prospects all year. Not more at the draft, not more at the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine Bowl. It is here. There are 319 some odd prospects that are all here in one place for this week and weekend. And each team gets the opportunity to speak with, I'm pretty sure, as many of them as they'd like. And so that's a big deal. They only get 20 minutes at a time. But if you're wanting to speed date pretty much the entire draft, this is where you have to do it.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think that the Titans are one of the teams who take it the most seriously. And moving on here, the thing that probably was one of the bigger storylines has to be Luke Steckel moving on and going to the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, it's a weird, not big storyline because it's big in the sense that it's definitely kind of the only Titans news that has come out.
It was definitely the thing that most of the guys in the media definitely wanted to talk
about.
Well,
here's what made it interesting. And I don't think we've actually reported this on the show in a Titans news segment, which we're not going to do for today's episode. We'll probably have some more of that later in the week. But briefly, a little Titans news.
Yeah.
Luke Steckel, who was the run game analyst, double check me on that, but I'm almost positive he was the run game analyst, newly named run game analyst by Mike Vrabel when all of those new hires came down a couple of weeks ago. And he is now headed to Chicago to be their assistant offensive line coach, I believe. Yeah, so run game analyst for the Titans after he was the tight end coach, I believe, this past season. He was then moved to run game analyst. There was a lot of question at the time whether or not that was a promotion or a demotion. It now seems to be pretty clearly a demotion because he's gone from tight end coach, a lead position coach, to the very ambiguous and intentionally vague title of run game analyst, to now a position that is down a rung on the ladder from where he started at tight end coach. He's now an assistant offensive line coach in Chicago. So if he's moving on for that, clearly his run game analyst position wasn't one that either he was happy with here in Tennessee or, maybe he was perfectly happy with it, but he saw this as a clear step up and sees upward mobility in Chicago. So he spoke to that, Mike Vrabel did, and he was asked about the departure of Luke Steckel, but Vrabel went on to talk about generally how he likes to treat his staff, how he likes to not groom is a bad word these days, but to nurture, foster his staff, bring along guys, and then give them the opportunity to hopefully be promoted from within. But if not, go climb, build their careers. So here was his answer, Mike Vrabel, his answer to the question about the Titans' loss of their run game analyst, Luke Steckel.
Luke wanted to go to Chicago. So Luke's going to Chicago. Was happy for Chase to be able to become a special teams coordinator. Knew that he probably would do that when we hired him. I want to support, and I know that you guys, mention it, but the whole idea is that we hire really good people, let them do their job, find ways to promote them from within when it's earned and there's opportunity. And if we don't, and we can't offer those opportunities, that we try to find those opportunities somewhere else for them. So speaking of Justin, this was a guy that, a person that started out as a special ed teacher, coached football and special ed. And the interview went really well from things that we believe about teaching and being creative and teaching and making a connection with players. I talked to numerous players that he's coached. That was something that they said was like, man, he found a way to connect with me and make me want to learn what we were doing. Had some experience with the offensive line, experience coordinating whatever capacity that was in Denver. Called the last 2 games out there. Good football coach, good teacher. Told him, coming in, this was the spot that we had open. We had a running back spot. This is what the vision I had. He turned down some other opportunities, and I'm really, excited. I didn't know Timmy and Charles, and, everybody over there on the offensive staff is excited.
We forgot to preface the Justin he's referring to there at the end. That's Justin Otten. That is the Titans' new running backs coach. He came from Denver, was their, I guess, interim offensive coordinator at the end of the year. After
axed.
Nate Hackett got the hatchet, he stepped in and called a pretty good set of games for the Broncos at the end of the year, promising offensive mind. He comes in, and it's another cool anecdote from Vrabel just about how guys rise and fall in the NFL. This last clip from Vrabel, and this one was the most interesting thing that I thought we heard from him
Me
today.
too. I thought this was probably my favorite clip from him today.
And really the reason why it's so interesting is because it gets, once again, it's another question that gets to the heart of the Titans, not identity crisis, but what they're thinking in terms of an identity shift in that front office, in that building. Vrabel was asked about, and I believe it was Paul Kaharski who asked this question. He's been doing this a long time. He's good at asking good questions. He asked whether or not the Titans, who for a long time have had an MO of drafting guys that are big, especially weapons. Their favorite receiver is a big receiver. I mean, the A.J. Browns, Corey Davises, Traylon Burks, those are their guys. And big is awesome in the NFL. Also awesome in the NFL, being fast.
Yep.
The best in the NFL, being big and fast.
Yep.
That's the, like, if you can order big and fast guys, I'll take 3 dozen, please and thank you. Unfortunately, big and fast they are usually contradictory, and so it's typically a choose your own adventure pick. Do you want a guy that's bigger or faster? And the Titans have gotten to the point where their bigness, their size, it seems like we're in agreement. The whole world seems to be in agreement that the Titans have gotten a little too big for their britches. Literally, they are so big, they are slow, they are oafing around on the field, and they need to focus more on getting faster. But that begs the question: are you interested in getting faster as a team to the point that you're willing to sacrifice that size? And that's something that we've not heard him speak directly to. We have heard Vrabel so far this offseason talk about how the Titans need to get faster. We've heard Rand Carthon say this team's got to get faster. But when asked, okay, if getting faster means sacrificing some of that size, are you still willing to get faster? Here's what Mike Vrabel had to say.
I think that you're looking for how they are able to produce with the skill set that they have. And big and fast is a great place to start, knowing that we need to get faster throughout our roster. But there's a couple ways to skin a cat, and making sure that, you're not, if you come off that model a little bit, there has to be some other things. If a guy doesn't have 34-inch arms and you're like, well, we'd really like to have that, are there other skill sets that they exhibit, and can they function and do their job outside of that? So, we know kind of where we need to be with that position in the wide receiver room, and then we'll just kind of carve out, see where we end up in free agency, see where we end up in the draft, and then, obviously as players become available, there's different opportunities to add players to your roster.
And this is a particularly great question to ask. It's a question the Titans are having to ask themselves this year, at least from a draft standpoint, because if you had to define this year's wide receiver class with one word, it's smaller.
Yep.
It's a smaller group. Do you know the meme, by the way, of the Ninja Turtles meme where it's the four Ninja Turtles as kids walking with
I got you.
with the what's his name? The main guy?
Not Shredder. It's that's the bad guy.
You look that up. We need to
right.
know this. But it's the master rat dude walking with the 4 Ninja Turtles. Mina Kimes posted a picture of this where it's just Quentin Johnson as the lone big receiver in the NFL. Splinter. Yeah. So Master Splinter with baby Ninja Turtles walking hand in hand. And it's just 4 babies walking, holding the hand of an adult. And that is Quentin Johnson as the adult, the big guy. And then the next top, Jordan Addison and JSN and Jalen Hyatt. And it's like the entire top of the wide receiver class. Yeah. And really into day 2 and day 3, this wide receiver class is a lot of smaller, speedier guys.
Yeah. I think, in perfect segue into what we're going to talk about for the rest of the week, I think one of the guys who might be available in the 2nd and 3rd rounds that is quickly rising up some boards, and we'll see how he tests this week, but also does bring a little bit of that size, is Cedric Tillman. And I think he could possibly be
the only guy I can think of off the top of my head that kind of fits that mold of pretty fast and pretty big in the later rounds.
Yeah, he could be someone that the Titans. I know everybody loves Jalen Hyatt going to the Titans, but another Vol for all you Vols fans that fits maybe the Titans' MO a little better.
Well, the thing about him, and we'll talk about him a lot later in the week, the thing about him that I find intriguing is the fact that, like you said, he is maybe the number 1 guy in terms of size, speed combination in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th tier of receiver in this draft. And I think that makes him sneaky way more valuable to folks around the NFL than maybe the average draft analyst. I think that he ends up going maybe significantly earlier than folks think, purely because some team is looking for traits and they say, oh, look, a guy that's big bodied and he's not slow. Let's add him and we can just develop him into a good receiver, regardless of the rest of his flaws.
We'll talk about him more on Saturday for sure.
We will. So those are all our thoughts, not all our thoughts, but that's most of our thoughts on our availability with Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel and Tim Kelly today. And that kind of concludes our Titans centric portion of the week. We put that behind us. We're of course still going to be covering everything from the combine from a Titans angle, But we're focused on the prospects, and we're going to move on to talking to some players tomorrow. We'll real quick kind of preview what tomorrow brings us. We have a couple of coaches and GMs still yet to speak tomorrow afternoon. Some of the highlights: Texans' new head coach D'Amico Ryans will speak at 1:00 tomorrow. So I'll say all these times in Central Times if folks are wanting to tune in, and you should on NFL Network. I think there's a number of different casts you can go and watch a lot of this live. But at noon Central Time, you got D'Amico Ryans, new Texans coach, will be sure to be at that press conference. Frank Reich, the new Panthers coach, former Colts head coach, at 12:30. Kevin Stefanski for the Browns at 12:45. Scott Fitterer for the Panthers at 1. And then we've got a Colts sandwich at 2:30 and 2:45. Chris Ballard, the GM up here in Indianapolis, and Shane Steichen, the brand new head coach, will be sure to be at most of those. Definitely D'Amico Ryans and the Colts duo will be covering the AFC South teams. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't go to the Lions sandwich that was coming up right after that. Brad Holmes, the GM up there, and then our guy Dan Camp.
To finish up,
hey, I said on one hand, Mike McDaniel. We're adding Dan Campbell to the list of guys that I'm nervous to talk to here because I want them to be my best friend. so that's the interesting folks that are talking tomorrow from a coaching standpoint. From a player standpoint, we won't name everybody, but tomorrow morning we get our first batch. It is edge and defensive line, correct? So we got edge and defensive line tomorrow starting at 7 a.m. Central Time. And we're going to have to pick and choose our spots because they've got them corralled by 20-minute blocks. There are 8 podiums and then 3 tables, so 11 guys at a time. And we're going to pick and choose who we want to speak to. We're going to focus mostly on guys at the top of the draft that are, interesting to talk about from a draft standpoint. But then also, we're not going to talk to a lot of the day one edges because the Titans are probably not going edge in the first round. But you could absolutely see them going with an edge in the second or third. So a lot of those guys in the 45 to 95 range we'll be focusing in on. And we're going to kind of approach each position from that standpoint. The tackles, we'll talk to the day one guys. Receivers, we'll talk to the day one guys. We'll talk to the day 2 and 3 guys. We're not going to talk to the day one safeties. We'll talk to probably all the cornerbacks because they're going to take a cornerback in the draft somewhere. You just know that they are. It's too talented a group. And every good NFL team, James Foster kind of started this on this show last spring, but every good NFL team, you just auto draft a cornerback every year. You always reload. It's one of those positions. You got to play a lot of them, and they get bad in a hurry. They don't age nearly as gracefully as some other positions. So with that in mind, just some of the highlights of guys that we've already circled as guys we want to talk to tomorrow that we find interesting for the Titans. In the early group, we have Felix Anadike Uzama from Kansas State, Will McDonald, Tuli Pulotu, I believe, and at Aditamiwa Adibare out of Northwestern. Man,
we'll have to learn these names.
That's a first ballot. That's a first team All Pro names group out of the gate right there. But those 4 guys are all defensive line and edge players. You could see the Titans target in day 2 and 3. Keon White, Ali Gay, Isaiah McGuire, Byron Young, Lucas Van Ness. That's
my favorite sneaky.
Well, and that's the one first round guy that we're going to pay attention to. One, because from a traits perspective, he's a Titans guy. He's a Mike Vrabel guy. So if they were to break the mold and for some, maybe they stick with NPF as their right tackle, and they're, you never know, they could go address left tackle in free agency, and then suddenly. We keep talking about Paris Johnson Jr., baby. Well, run that card in right now. It is February 28th, but we are running the card up for Paris Johnson Jr.
Yeah.
That entire narrative could turn on its head in a matter of minutes this offseason if they were to go make a splash signing for their left tackle. So there's a chance that they go, wide receiver with the first round pick. I think there's a decent chance with how good these top end edge players are. There's a chance they go edge out of the gate, and Lucas Van Ness could be one of those guys. Yeah. We've also got Byron Young out of Tennessee, who I'm told could test really, really well and raise his stock as a early day 2 guy. Zach Harrison, a number of other big names. We'll just kind of skim the list here. Will Anderson also speaks tomorrow. Any other names here that you're seeing that really stick out to you? BJ Ojolari, Henry To'oTo'o, DeMarvion Overshone. We'll talk to Derek Hall. We'll definitely talk to. That could be a day 2 guy. Andre
For
Carter
sure.
II is a
Yeah.
guy that if he were to fall, they could be interested in. Tyrus Wheat and Noah Taylor, they could be interested in later days. Brian Breesy is one that we're really intrigued by. He and Keanu Benton are in the same group tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow late morning.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter also speaking tomorrow, and Cam Young out of Mississippi State. That just skimming the list here. Those are the guys that really stick out to me.
A lot of interesting guys tomorrow.
A lot of interesting guys from that group. We'll have all of those guys to talk about tomorrow on tomorrow's show tomorrow afternoon. We don't know an exact time. I think as we get a feel for the way that the schedule is going to work while we're here, we'll probably settle on a time starting tomorrow that we'll be doing the live show every day. But if you tuned in, really appreciate you tuning in. I know kind of a scatterbrained episode, weird for the Combine, but this is part 1 of our live Combine series. The next 7 days, we got a live show every single day. If you want to check it out or send it to somebody after it's live, we'll have the show out every morning, the morning after the afternoon of recording. It'll be out on YouTube in video form, as well as on the podcast feed, the Hot Read podcast. Make sure to check us out. When you go to listen to the podcast, please make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and then leave a review. Say whatever you want in the review. We will be happy to shout you out on the show. We will read verbatim what you say, whatever it is. So please leave us a review and we will shout you out on the show. It means, I would consider it a personal favor. It means a ton to us if you were to go and do that. And it allows us to do awesome things like come here and cover the Combine for you all, for Titans fans, and for the Nashville media and the draft for the Nashville media. I mean, we've said it once. I'll say it again. This is your number one source for draft specific broadcasting in the city of Nashville. We are the most interested in the draft process out of anybody else. We're one of the only Titans media entities that are going to stay here all week, and we're here for the draft, man. It was dessert today getting to talk to Carthon and Kelly and Vrabel, but we're here to do what we're going to do for the next 6 days. So super jacked about that. Thanks for tuning in. Again, make sure to be back with us tomorrow afternoon and bring a friend or two. Tell them about it. Tell them, hey, 2 guys covering the Combine. If you want us to talk to certain prospects, you have until tomorrow morning to hit us up via DM on Twitter or in the replies to our tweets. Let us know who you want us to key in on. Again, tomorrow, defensive line and edge players will be available. A lot of awesome stuff coming down the pike. Until then, I think we'll go get some dinner. We've been going nonstop all day.
I'll go grab a beer. Let's go.
Let's go grab a drink. Until then, I'm your host, Easton Freeze, for the Hot Read podcast and producer JT. We will be back with you tomorrow afternoon here live from Indianapolis at the 2023 NFL Combine. Have a great rest of your evening.